Welcome to the Fashion Translator. I'm Claire, your host. Together we explore how AI and innovation are reshaping the fashion industry through creativity, technology, and global partnership. For today's episode, I'm thrilled to welcome Kevin Massar, co-founder of Field Soccer Dream, a design-led soccer brand focused on community building and cultural storytelling. Kevin, thank you for joining me. Could you please start by introducing yourself and the company?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. My name's Kevin. I'm, as you said, the co-founder of the Field Dream, which is a soccer-based culture brand that both delivers lifestyle product, but also works directly with clubs to build their identity and as well as their uniforms and fanwear, build a culture around local communities that want to uplift themselves through product and design.
Great. Tell us a bit more. What is the soul of Field Soccer Supply? What is the vision?
The vision is that there's just a lot of sea of sameness out there. So first and foremost is to offer the local clubs the same level of identity that maybe the big clubs that we see every weekend play on the television come to life. So that's the first objective as we grow our company. The second thing is to really give them a platform, not just through products, but also through elevating their stories in bigger media. And the last part is to do a little bit of good. So we'd like to think that our bigger vision is to take plastic out of this industry. The majority of these uniforms are built out of polyester and those end up in landfill. And so how do we create a system where when at the moment we sign a club, we take back the uniforms, we recycle those. Now those can be recycled into new yarn, but that's a complicated process and we're not big enough quite to do that yet. But what we can do is recycle those, and those recycled pieces might end up in car seats or might end up in stuffing of other things. And there's just a different way of looking at it and not just thinking about the commercial aspect of it, but also how do we be doing a little bit more good in the world.
This step of just taking this uniform that wouldn't be used otherwise is not something that you would usually pass down. It's very specific. So to get them back and make sure they don't end up in the garbage or forgotten in the end of a cupboard, I think that's a beautiful mission.
Right, 100%. I think there's a lot of innovation in this space happening. If you look at the footwear space, which is something I'm familiar with as well throughout my career, there's just a lot of really exciting things coming to the marketplace where there's even biodegradable polyurethanes in the market right now. What does that mean for apparel? How do we look at that as kind of blue sky scenario, if you like, and understand how do we, as a small company, be part of that in a bigger way? And hopefully the big giants would join us, but because we do know that the apparel industry has a big obligation to be part of the solution. And I think small startups like ourselves can be part of that.
Of course. You mentioned footwear. You were holding quite senior roles in the global footwear industry and apparel. What were some key turning points for you that helped you shape and build your company?
That's a great question. When you start your career and you work at a big sportswear giant, I think you're just a sponge, right? You're just learning every single day about product and product creation, how the process works and how do you bring things to market and think about processes. And as you start to grow within those companies, your focus shifts from being an individual contributor to becoming a team leader. And from a team leader, you become a process and people leader. And ultimately, when you're like 20 years in, you think about like, how am I going to help the next generation have that same experience that you've had? I think that's really a big part of it, of how I think about and how I thought about the roles within those companies. But at one point, you're like, there's just so much things that you cannot do within big companies. You cannot just flip the switch and make something sustainable 100%. You cannot just make a decision quickly because there's so many spans and layers that you have to go against. Most of the companies I worked for were publicly traded. So there is a big obligation against profit margin versus quality, as an example.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of other things that made me believe maybe now is the time that I take all of those things and build it into something and maybe be a little bit more romantic around products. First and foremost, foremost, and maybe be a little bit more cautious around how we are building product and what we want to put out there. And it's also a really good opportunity to work with friends and really close friends. So and there's just a lot of those things that led up to it. I would say the thing I loved most about working in corporate was people. And as an entrepreneur and a small company, those are the things you'll miss. Like mostly day to day, the young and up and coming, really smart people that you can learn from and get inspired by. I think those are the things that sometimes you miss, but ultimately the freedom you have to think about a concept and bring it to market if you can quicker, faster, with the right values that you've instilled into yourself over all those years. I think those are all the upsides.
Yeah, for sure. Working with friends or people that share this very strong passion is a completely different game. It changed really the vibe and the feeling of the everyday work doesn't feel quite the same when you're with friends or passion-led people rather than corporate industry, that's for sure.
100%. But again, even in corporate, you'll make a lot of really good friends. And some of those people are still helping me today start up this venture. But I definitely do not miss the corporate environment where you literally talk about things for days after day and decisions are put out and someone else needs to make a decision and you worked on something for a long time and it doesn't pan out. And I'm sure there's a lot of really good reasons for that to happen. But it's true that starting up something small is very exciting and there's just tons of energy around it to do it.
Yeah, it's for sure a different momentum. Things are more agile. You can shift very fast, pivot, turn around ideas a lot faster in terms of how things move. But what are some of the challenges that you had to transition and shift your approach and then overcome for your company?
Where do we start almost? So this is how I experienced it. So being close to 2 years in now, the first 6 months are just excitement and all these big ideas you have and you put them on paper and you still have a little bit of corporate jet lag. And so you're making like grand PowerPoint presentations for, I don't know who you're making those for, but they look really good. And you're making 5-year P&Ls and start to think about what this company could be in like 5 years. But you quickly realize that there's a lot of roadblocks. The first biggest roadblock is resource, right? So I think you're so used to once those decisions are made and going in a bigger environment is that you have so many resources to do it. Now you have to do everything. It's you and maybe a business partner doing pretty much everything. And then you can hire some freelance work, but that is out of your budget. So how do you be smart about that? So those big plans quickly become smaller plans and become what is the next hurdle we need to cross, building the website and getting the right people involved. And then you quickly find out like you might have picked a payment system that isn't really compatible for both in-person sales as well as online sales. And then you find out that tariffs hit you all of a sudden and everything you budgeted for is now 40% more expensive, or there's always something going on. It's almost like the hurdles, big or small, they come at you quite fast every day. And you'll have to overcome that. As I reflect on maybe 2 years in, I think the most important quality as an individual or maybe as a team or a partnership you need to have is grit. Stick with it. And it's almost like that. It goes up and then it comes down. And it goes up, then it goes down. And there's something really
and you can't predict it.
Yeah, it's very unpredictable and you got to stick with it. There's many hurdles from capital to resources to day-to-day silly stuff and things you would never imagine doing. Inventory not fitting 100% into the space that you allocated it for. The store lighting not exactly where you wanted it to be. Like all those things are choices on a daily basis and how you overcome those. And you got to stick with it. And then you see your first sales and you're like, oh, my spreadsheet says something completely different. And so I keep really go through these like phases of, oh, I really want to give up, or I really don't think that this is right for me, to, oh, this is so exciting. And like, I'm doing all these things that are amazing and meeting all these new people, or I've got all these new ventures. The one thing I would say, and I would say specifically in an entrepreneurial environment, I think that the culture here where I live right now is fueling, is people really want to help, right? So like a lot of people around you that see what you're doing and they're just there to support you and root you on and be happy for you to succeed. And I think that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible and it's precious. It makes a big difference because at the end of the day, you don't feel so alone in this crazy journey.
No, exactly.
And you've talked about shifting the US soccer from a transactional model to more of a community-driven experience. Could you share a bit more about that?
This is really the root and the heart and soul of why we think and why we believe that giving the local communities platforms to elevate not just themselves as an organization, but also specifically giving the children and the kids that play in these leagues an opportunity to feel connected. I think that's really what it's about. If you think about communities, the communities do things as a collective that elevate the individual, the people that touch it, and make things more beautiful, basically. I grew up close to Amsterdam, The Hague, to be honest. And I think if I reflect on my sports journey, it has always been community-based. Right. So you're sitting in the clubhouse, your parents are volunteering in the clubhouse, the grandpas of your best teammates are helping out behind the snack bar or making food for the kids or making things run smoothly. But it's all evolved around this idea of having a place to go, and it becomes part of your identity over time. And if I think about that model and I think about soccer or football, and specifically, it doesn't exist really here in the US. I mean, there's youth sports that is organized through volunteers, but I think the majority of specifically soccer is really starting to become a pay-to-play opportunity. So parents have to pay lots of money every year to have their child play. They have to buy the uniforms. They have to buy, it's almost like home and away, the bag and the warm-up parka, and it becomes very transactional. And I think ultimately, what's the counterbalance to that? Are the clubs able to create those platforms and create those community pillars that are so important for kids to stay engaged? There's some crazy stats. 75% of Americans actually played soccer at one point in their life, but the majority quit. Two reasons. One is if you're not making it to college or to pro, like there isn't really a platform for you to continue to play. And if I think back again to my own journey, there'll be like 20 adult teams, and some were really poor, but they were playing every single week. It was a first team and there was a second team, and there might have been an 11th team and might be two 11th teams. And even maybe your grandpa was still playing in one of those. And I think that community that I talk about is like, how do we continue to build that? Part of it is the youth sports market, but also part of it is continue to connect that culture, connect that opportunity for young adults to continue playing. And as a brand, we see ourselves as a club. We host these events every month where people can come in and play for free. We build a partnership with a local indoor facility to do that. As we start to think about what our role is beyond just making great products, it's also like really building that community hub, specifically where we are based right now. But then as we start to grow, like how does that relate to other communities we enter? And there's some really great examples of that. Other brands are doing really good things. There's a really famous cycling brand that has done an excellent job on building clubhouses across the globe. How do you think about that as a model that we can learn from and implement that in our space as well? But ultimately, this whole idea of pay to play, how do we create a more affordable solution from a uniform perspective? How do parents pay maybe not $300 for the full kit every year, home and away? And what I just talked about, like the bag, the warm-ups, everything, and how does it become a little bit more accessible? How do we then also help them create a platform so kids start feeling part of their club and we can be doing a little bit of good for them as well?
I really relate with this perspective of the community, because if I make the parallel for myself, what sticks to me on this is the community is not just for the kid. If I think my childhood, my scenario, so I'm Canadian, so of course for us it was hockey. I never played hockey. I don't like the cold in general, but my brother did. And my entire family would go to watch the games. And because it was all small towns, the community was 100% there. Like all the moms, all the sisters, all the dad, we would all go and we would watch the games, and then there would be the excitement before the games, and then after the games, everybody would go to the brasserie, like we would be all together, and then there would be weekends of tournaments. This whole thing built up, and I have amazing memories about it. Even my father, all the father had their own games that they were doing later on. It was not just my brother himself, it was me, it was my mom, my father. All of us gravitated around that, and the community really made a difference. These memories, I'll carry them with me forever.
Yeah, I love that. That's exactly what this is about, right? Is if you think about the impact you have as a company, and maybe that's something back to your first question, is what make the most amount of impact? What's the biggest thing you've learned working for corporate? Is those corporations have an opportunity to make massive impacts to consumers for people's lives. And I think that's something you can start embed as a small startup. You can start embedding that from the get-go. But what you were just saying is it is ultimately about that community and those experiences and those memories that last for a lifetime to be able to create those. And I think it's incredible. The platform exists. My kids play baseball here in a local community, and there is a clubhouse and there is a sense of community and there is that exact experience that I've seen and know from back home. It's there, but how do we take a sport that really has been commercialized, probably to the max in the US? How do we take that and make sure that the AYSO community kind of organizations continue to have a role, but also how do the club soccer programs lean into that? And how does it all tie together? I think that's a really important component of it. I think it's going to help not just the communities and the clubs, but it's also going to, as you say, and probably the most important thing is create those memories and those connections kids playing in.
Yeah, absolutely. Continuing on the community discussion, you mentioned that you would rather build organically when it comes to social media rather than paid media. What systems or strategy would be most critical in supporting this kind of growth?
It's nice when you don't have the pressures to have to hit every sales metric every kind of month. The first and foremost reason for that is we like to build relationships with our consumers that are lasting and long term. We also want to make sure that people that buy our products love our products and feel that it was their decision buying it and experience it. And so like those hand-to-hand relationships, whether it's in the store, whether it's like having outreach in the right way, being part of events that drive the communities, whether it's soccer tournaments or the other day we did a soccer trading card convention and we were just there meeting people. And so anybody that loves the game of soccer experiences our brand. And our goal isn't there to sell product. Our goal is there to meet the people. And I think, as you probably know, consumers that you build a long-term relationship with are going to be most loyal. And their value over time is just significantly higher to spending that dollar for every $2 return. And if you're lucky and reaching that right audience. And we just felt at this moment, as we started to build our brand, is that we're not quite ready to put all of our dollars into paid, and we'd rather put those dollars back into events and start building our foundation properly. When we do start putting on pay eventually down the line, at least we have an authentic position that we're coming from and that we already have consumers that authentically love our brand and have reviews that hopefully are favorable to us. So I think there's just a lot of that thinking going into it. It doesn't mean that we're never going to do any paid or we're not doing any paid. We're doing a little bit of Google search to make sure that we are visible and that crawlers are able to find our pages and our site. So we're doing all the fundamentals there, but we're not doing that with the intention to make a purchase or make a sale.
To build a strong core.
Correct. To build a really strong foundation of loyal consumers and start small and then start building upon that. That's the logic behind it. And I'm sure there's a million marketers who will tell me like you're doing it wrong and you need to think about it differently. Again, there's a couple of values and authenticity is one of those that we want to make sure that we are hitting on as a brand. And we believe that the more authentic relationships we build, I think better. And I would say shout out to maybe one of my employers' events where one of the founders is still actively going and literally shaking people's hands and going out into the communities and making sure that he represents that brand most authentically. And I think that's the special sauce that a lot of brands sometimes forget. I think there's a lot of really good brands that do it really well, but there's a lot of brands that, get out there and put a ton of money against paid and I'm sure get fantastic sales, but
it's a tough balancing to be able to scale while still maintaining the soul very much alive.
Yeah, so there's this little things that I picked up over the years in corporate that I'm really fun. I'm trying to implement in our way. And so it really is about that human connection and being an authentic community-driven brand.
Which area of your business would you say has most of your focus right now?
Insane.
All of them at the same time?
All of that, yeah. All of them. You go through these phases. So maybe the first 6 months, it's all about building the identity, building the product. You roll through that. It's probably more than the 6 months, probably a year and a bit. As you know, product creation takes a long time. But before you know it, you have a bunch of product coming in. And second, I would say the next 6 months, we were really focused on building up our store, building up our platforms to connect with clubs. And yeah, we were doing a ton of like B2B connection and outreach and understanding who's out there, what the market looks like, but we weren't really actively focused on it because once you get into that kind of rail, you want to make sure your systems work, your processes work. You can deliver upon the promise when you have a conversation like, oh yeah, we can do your uniforms, and then you're like fumbling it. That's not a great experience for that customer, and you most likely will not be able to get any repurchases from that.
Correct.
And we made some of those mistakes, to be honest, right? We're not here saying that we're doing everything right, but we wanted to make sure that our foundation and our process and our product lived up to the expectations that we were promising. And so now, as we move into this year, our goal is to really go focus on our B2B business. So really connect with as many clubs in our space that we want to partner with. We're doing some work in Arizona. We're doing some work here locally. We're starting to get some outreach on the East Coast. So we're starting to really focus on that right now. And really our goal is to build a really good foundation of not just relationships, but also getting to get our hands dirty and do some of the work for these clubs and build those relationships. So when the time comes that they need to make uniform decisions, then we're right there with them to help them and to connect with them. But yeah, it's really our main focus right now. All those things are working. We're going to have an official store opening in March, 20th of March here in Tustin, California. So that's really exciting. So we're focusing on that. We're starting to ramp up some partnerships with some media, and like we're doing some work with some podcasts. We're going to do some collaborations as well. Obviously talking to you, so we're starting to do some of that work as well. So we're really focusing on moving on from the product and the brand creation to starting to really focus on sales, on marketing, and understanding how we can continue to use our networks to build those authentic connections over time. So really actively reaching out and meeting people and making connections.
And if you could automate one aspect of all that, which one would it be?
Yeah, I'm working hard on that. You go on any of your feeds or whatever you consume all of your information, but obviously the big rage is all about artificial intelligence and the bots that can do it, and where it's Clawbot that is able to run on a separate device and then be able to be like 17 of your employees. I can tell you, like, I'm not obviously a tech guy. I have a little bit of a deficit, but yeah, it sounds really promising, but it's really difficult because ultimately it's about letting go, right? It's about trusting that there's an automated system that can do a lot of the work for you.
Yeah.
But there's tons of things that we are automating, right? Responses and email responses on outreach and crawling the resources to get a database of leads that you want to start thinking about. Obviously start with cold leads and then how to become warm leads, starting to do all of that work. But there's still a lot of handholding that you need to do. And at least not for us. It's definitely not running on autopilot. And it's definitely not something that I think right now we are looking into. But I would say is, as a small company, I think your major advantage is to take advantage of those developments. Right? So like whatever it needs to be, from our dream scenario is having customers look at some of our designs and say, I like this, but I like it a little bit more like this, and then have some sort of like automation or artificial intelligence help with those design processes, because ultimately that is a lot of work. Creating tech packs would be incredible to have done through artificial intelligence. Those are all things we're looking into and understanding how that works. Simple things like getting your website SEO done, all that stuff. Having AI help you, I think, is the major.
It's an incredible tool, especially for small startup and company not just starting. It opens up a reach that we didn't have before. You can leverage, not like you said, not autopilot, but how to utilize it to take yourself to the next, and your company to the next level, or faster and more efficient, and have this layer of analytics of like where you can understand what is working and what is not, so you can change direction much quicker.
And then the other part is I can see a lot of our suppliers use LLMs or the language models pretty much on a weekly basis. So the communication that was coming out of countries where English wasn't their native language used to be very difficult because people get lost in translation and you don't speak their language, they don't speak our language. And so it became really difficult sometimes. Right now, chat GPTs or Claudes or whatever are really helping streamlining those conversations. And so everyone's using it in different ways, and understanding legal documents before you even talk to your lawyer. Those are really like helpful tools as well. So there's just so many things and so many use cases it's helpful for. Right now, our job and our focus as a company is to take those, see which steps in the process we want to automate through it and which ones we cannot yet.
Correct.
In our conversations previously, we talked a lot about, everyone's talking about, your design work, it's going to be so easy. And quite honestly, I don't think it's there yet. It's getting rapidly better.
Yeah.
But it's very clear. We have a lot of even customers showing us like, oh, look, I just designed this. And what do you think? And we're like, oh, this is great. But then you start to look at it in detail and you're like, okay, if we start printing this or creating this, it's going to look.
Production perspective is something that has to be learned.
So I think that with the right amount of money and capital, you can create amazing systems that are able to do a lot of that for you. But as a small startup, you have to rely on what's out there. What's out there right now, available to us at least, is still not quite ready, specifically on the design side. But there's a lot of really great use cases we are using.
There is. If we look at the next 3 to 5 years, what does the next growth stage look like for Field Soccer Supply?
Yeah, for us at the Field Dream, aka Field Soccer Supply, we still need to figure that out a little bit, is really focus on building up our B2B business, right? And I think that's the foundation of how we reach many people really quickly, how we can really fulfill the promise of the vision of our brand. We love all of the direct-to-consumer interactions and the people that come through the store. We love those conversations, but it's one-to-one. And so if you start thinking about how can we make the most amount of impact, both on a product creation perspective, how can we start ramping up most of the sales? It's all going to be through our B2B, or we like to say B2C, which is direct to club business. Ultimately, that's our focus for the next 3 years. Hopefully, from a numbers perspective, that's going to ramp up our company quickest. And that is going to fuel all the other great things we can continue to do. So that's going to fuel product innovation and trying to create a biodegradable yarn with a vendor or partner that is willing and able to do that with us. How do we create garments that we don't have to recycle anymore, but how do we create garments that can actually be thrown in the garden or in the green bin and biodegrade on its own? Those are things, but you need capital to do it. And so you need sales. It's like that flywheel needs to go first for us to do all of the other things. It allows us to create events and do grassroots at a much bigger scale. It allows us to start maybe hiring some people to help on a full-time basis versus us using a lot of freelance work right now. And so there's a lot of these things that are all fueled through the same thing, which means growth. And our goal is right now to really focus on that pro stage. And hopefully that's going to be exponential. And then from that, start to invest in the values, in the pillars that we believe in: product innovation, around sustainability, in kind of marketing in terms of community and events, as well as creating and helping athletes through that as well, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the things that I'm focused on right now. We'd like to potentially open up more spaces and really creating these clubhouses across the nation and hopefully eventually across the world. You can dream big, right? So we're already growing out of our capacity for our inventory, so we're going to have to make choices on that. There's always something going on. I think the next 5 years are going to be very exciting and very
hectic. Kevin, we'll make sure to keep an eye on you and the company for what's to come. Before we wrap things up, can you mention again the opening date for the store?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. First and foremost, thank you for taking the time and inviting us to talk to you. We are going to open our store in Tustin, California on March 20th. More information, just follow us on @thefieldDream on Instagram and thefieldDream.com online. We'll post more on those events there. And anybody that's in the neighborhood or in the area, this Saturday is going to be our first kick around in Touch and Go in Tustin. So we'll have a little bit of an event, music, a couple drinks, and as an opportunity to meet more people and have people play. If you're done playing, you don't know where to play after you're aged out of the smaller age groups, and you come join us and be part of our journey. So thank you.
Kevin, for all the listeners who will want to learn more about that or stay in touch, all the information will be in the description. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today.
All right, thank you so much. See ya.